We are covering the Norway trial, and we are on days 5 and 6. Sorry, I didn't have a video out yesterday. That was basically because sometimes people are more important than silly little YouTube videos, and I usually try and prioritize helping people as much as I possibly can, because that's the whole point of this thing. So anyway, we're going to get right into it. Now, I thought about it a little bit, and on just for whatever Wally personal grounds, feeling uncomfortable, I don't feel comfortable telling other people's stories for them. So if any of the people that did speak out at the trial want to come on the channel and tell their story, I'm more than happy to give them the platform so that they can do that, and that'd be great. But for me, just like going and reading and telling their story, I just find it like a little weird, because people's stories are so personal and they're very emotional and intimate details and lots of things surrounding it. So I'm not going to really focus too much on their personal stories, but shout outs to you guys. Bravo. Well done. Give Watchtower hell, because that's what we're all here for. But I did want to focus on a response by my good old friend Jurgen Pedersen, that is like the head of the Scandinavian something or another for Jehovah's Witnesses. And I just wanted to sort of break down how this clown, maybe he's not directly lying to the court, but he's intentionally muddying the waters to such a degree that what's the difference between a lie and intentionally muddying the waters with hair splitting and goofy talk? Just call things for what they are. So anyway, let's get right into it. Run the intro. Hello and welcome back to the JW Thoughts channel. My name is Wally, and today we are going to be looking at Jurgen Peterson, however you say it, and his response after someone gave testimony about their experience growing up as a Jehovah's Witness and the effects it had on them. And I thought it was very telling about how disingenuous Watchtower representatives can be, especially when they're talking in a official capacity. So quickly before we do that, don't forget to drop a like on the video and subscribe to the channel. It helps get out to more people on YouTube. With all that being said, let's look at this. So after someone gave testimony, we won't get into that at all, but the answer from the Jehovah's Witnesses was thus. But anyway, Jehovah's Witnesses encourage parents to take loving care of their children. They do not control the family life of the members. Each family must make its own decisions in matters of child rearing, and the religion of Jehovah's Witnesses does not interfere with family relations. Now, this isn't really muddying the waters. This is just, I don't know what else to say, but this dude ain't telling the truth here, because that is not the case whatsoever. So let me break this down. They do not interfere with family relations. My butt that they don't. If you are a Jehovah's Witness and you are married to someone, and for whatever reason you want to get a divorce, you're no longer compatible with your mate, you don't have any recourse unless one of you decides to commit adultery or go and sleep with someone else to scripturally end the marriage. They still consider you married to that person scripturally, even if you want to not be so legally. So what are the ramifications for this goofy rule? Well, two people can separate, and then they don't have any recourse to start a new family. They can't date or marry someone else or sleep with someone else without facing consequences. One of them has to take a fall. I know it sounds insane, but this is a real situation. I was literally talking to someone the other day where this was something that they had to deal with, where I was like, well, I don't know what to do, because now me and my wife, we separated, and then I don't want to be a Jehovah's Witness, but then someone has to cheat or sleep with someone in order for the scriptural marriage to end. So you don't have any recourse without facing those consequences, which means you will be shunned, you will be isolated from your community. Now, how in God's green earth are we not going to call that interfering with family relations? Like, you're literally interfering with the choice that someone can make of dating or marrying someone else or having sex with someone. You are interfering with that. That is interfering with family relations, my guy. So I don't know how you're able to say this and still sleep at night, but by golly, George, you're a real goofball. Anyway, so the other thing he says is they do not control the family life of the members. Each family must make its own decisions in matters of child rearing. Again, a bunch of turds here. Historically speaking, Watchtower has put out a plethora of material talking about higher education and the dangers of that, not letting your child go to a university, encouraging them to go to a trade school. That is interfering with child rearing. That is Watchtower sticking its ugly little face in someone else's family and making decisions for them, or they'll face consequences. So an instance that I know personally is someone that was an elder. Their child ended up going to a university, and they were removed as an elder, which is seen as a bad thing. So if you're removed from a position of power because of something that has happened, you are now looked at as someone that isn't a spiritual example. You're kind of looked down on by other people. And that is just how it works within the Jehovah's Witness culture. So to say that they don't interfere or the family must make their own decisions in child rearing is very disingenuous. And then you have the whole issue of blood. If someone's child needs a life-saving medical intervention that involves a blood transfusion, Watchtower absolutely interferes in this situation. So I don't know how he says this sentence, and hopefully throughout the proceedings, the judge can look at this and view it as nonsensical as it truly is, because he shouldn't just be allowed to get up there and just say whatever he wants and everyone's just like, oh yeah, well listen. I know Watchtower sort of higher ups are used to doing that, but I'm hoping that the Norwegian court doesn't really take these things too seriously, because they don't make any sense. Anyway, let's move right along with what else he says. We also want to emphasize that becoming one of Jehovah's Witnesses is a free and informed choice, which was also the case for the interviewee. No one is pressured to become one of Jehovah's Witnesses, which is why Jehovah's Witnesses do not baptize infants. The religious literature of Jehovah's Witnesses uses the Bible as an authority. The Bible encourages everyone to exercise their powers of perception to distinguish between right and wrong, and readers are encouraged to make informed decisions based on biblical principles and their conscience. Each individual worshiper is free to make moral decisions and to choose whether or not he or she wants to serve God and live according to biblical principles. This is also the case when it comes to the Bible's principles of sexual morality and exclusion. So we got a little bit to unpack here. First off, the ye old argument, we don't baptize infants, everyone makes a choice, they are not pressured. I've heard personally Tony Morris give this talk. He did it at, I can't remember if it was at one of our conventions or our assemblies, but I was sitting there in the audience in like the third row, and he's yammering on about how if a child is old enough to drive and able to make that choice, then to get their driver's license, so here in America it's at 16, then why are they not baptized? If they're saying they're able to make that choice, then why are you not letting them get baptized? Or why aren't they baptized yet? And even suggested that parents should not let their children get a driver's license unless they get baptized. Now, this was taken very seriously because I had friends, I knew people that could not get their driver's license unless they got baptized. They literally did it just so they could drive a car. The difference between driving a car and getting baptized as a Jehovah's Witness is that you are not committing yourself to an organization for a lifelong term. You are not saying, okay, well, if I ever mess up one time, I'll never get to drive a car again. I'll get locked in a room. Like the idea of shunning a child that messes up or makes a mistake, which it's vile. It's evil to put that in front of people. So anyway, trying to stay on point, this idea that no one is pressured to become a Jehovah's Witness, well, I have had personal experience of parents that said, hey, we are not going to allow you to get your driver's license unless you get baptized. If that ain't pressure, then I don't know what is. And the reason that they did that, it wasn't a choice that they came up with. It wasn't the idea of their own. It was only after a governing body member suggested it. And they hang on the words of governing body members. So that leads right into the religious literature of Jehovah's Witnesses uses the Bible as an authority. Okay, you can say that, but are you just using the puppet Bible? Because Tony Morris, read some scriptures about why that is biblical, essentially. So even though they use the Bible as an authority, they are still the ones interpreting it, which means you can't really just say that Jehovah's Witnesses use the Bible as the authority because it needs interpretation, and the interpreters are the governing body. And so when the governing body says something, they are ultimately the ones that are controlling the narrative, which goes completely counter to what he says here. The Bible encourages everyone to use their powers of perception to distinguish between right and wrong, and readers are encouraged to make informed decisions based on biblical principles and their conscience. This is also not true. If you are a Jehovah's Witness and you disagree with something in the Bible, you will be encouraged to change your mind so that way you are part of the hive mind of how Jehovah's Witnesses believe, or you're going to get kicked out. And one of the people that gave their testimony, that was exactly what happened. He had concerns that some of the teachings weren't biblical, and he wrote to the governing body, wrote to the branch office. They told him to be quiet, and essentially he was like, okay, well, I'm going to write a book about it, and then they disfellowshipped him. So he was exercising his powers of perception to decipher between right and wrong based off of what he thought of the Bible, and yet he was still disfellowshipped as a Jehovah's Witness for having his own opinion. So it was made clear during the testimonies that were given that this is nonsense. You have to fall and conform to what the Watchtower leaders say, and if you don't, well, you can't talk about it. And as soon as you become public with your disagreements with the governing body, they will most likely disfellowship you. And the last part of his statement is thus, the accusation that all Jehovah's Witnesses who number over 12,000 in Norway and more than 8.6 million worldwide feel a, quote, lingering threat of consequences if one does not think and act correctly is not only wrong, it is insulting. This has been confirmed by many witness statements during the ongoing trial. We respect the feelings and choices of those who no longer wish to be Jehovah's Witnesses. At the same time, we believe it is reasonable to ask that the feelings and personal decisions of those who joyfully want to worship their God in a peaceful way are also respected. If you had asked me when I was still a Jehovah's Witness, if I was feeling a lingering threat of consequences, in an official way, I would have said, oh, absolutely not. That's ridiculous. I'm doing this because I love the Bible and I love God. And that's why I'm doing this. But that's not true. And when you leave and you reflect and you come to a better understanding of the real motivations why you are doing X, Y, and Z, it is readily apparent that the reason you're doing it is fear. You are under constant fear of getting smited at Armageddon. Well, it's at Armageddon now, but before it was the Great Tribulation. Hey, if I'm disfellowshipped in the Great Tribulation, hey, I get kicked out. but now it's at Armageddon, so I guess you can still do that last second conversion. But the whole life growing up as a Jehovah's Witness is a constant fear of messing up and getting kicked out. And you see how sad and depressed and lonely people that do mess up and get kicked out are. And it's really just, yeah, it's just not reasonable to say that because one of the women that made this statement, a lingering threat of consequences if one does not think and act correctly, to call that insulting is kind of insulting. Like, but I understand what he's saying, because if you ask a believing Jehovah's Witness, they will give you the party line. But you can't just ask someone that believes and supports it. You have to ask people that actually leave. That way they can give you a clear understanding of the reality versus a prescribed perception that happens within the religious community of Jehovah's Witnesses. Anyway, that's about all I got for you guys today. I hope you enjoyed it. A little bit of a Wally rant session, but most of these videos are. With all that being said, stay safe, be kind, and show yourself the same kindness that you try and show to others. And I hope you have a good ass day.